Hello, everyone. We are very happy to welcome you on the board discussion dedicated to Performing Kyiv, the nomadic project of Kyiv Art Week, organized in the framework of Zurich Art Weekend. Before proceeding to introducing our panelists, I would like to extend gratitude to Löwenbräukunst and schwarzescafé team hosting us here today. And coming to introduce our panel discussion participants, I would like to start with Eugene Bereznitsky. Eugene is a Ukrainian curator, a founder of Kyiv Art Week, co-curating Performing Kyiv project together with Maria Vtorushina. Dr. Daniel Stauffacher is a former ambassador of Switzerland, a delegate of Swiss Federal Council, and a founder and president of ICT for Peace Foundation. Thank you for being with us here today. And Nika Timashkova is a Ukrainian-born Swiss artist participating in the project. We are very happy to have you here today. And today we will also have a video input by Maria Kulikovska, Ukrainian artist who is currently based in Kyiv. My name is Olena Iegorova. I am a Ukrainian curator, public program lead for Zurich Art Weekend 2023, and a moderator of today's discussion. I'm very happy to see all of you here today. Thank you for coming. And I would like to start our discussion with inviting Eugene to tell us more about Performing Kyiv project and how it was born.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. Yes, first of all, thank you everybody who came here on this rainy, gray day. I hope you will enjoy a little bit of the time with us. Yes, my name is Evgeny. I'm an artist since already a while, and I'm a newcomer to Zurich. But I would like to say that it was a very big and pleasant experience since last month of 2022, when we met with Daniel, who became actually a guide to Zurich or the Swiss art community. And really grateful to you because you really made this way really smooth, and I'm really grateful. Daniel introduced me to team of Zurich Art Weekend, and that was a love at first sight. We merrily doing a similar event. I was managing and I was founder and the manager of Kyiv Art Week since 2016, and we understood each other very, very quickly, and the team of Zurich Art Weekend was so generous to offer to do something in the framework of their great event, and we suggested a nomadic edition of Kyiv Art Week into the framework. And we thought of something elegant and small, not with transportation of enormous exhibitions, which is also very limited due restrictions imposed by full-scale Russian invasion, but also we thought to do something like really interesting, which would differ from ordinary practices, and we put together the performance program, which is called Performing Kyiv. Very easy, and that was a little bit of a challenging to put together because of the difficulties of logistical difficulties, because now the artists are widely spread around the world because of all the events happening in Ukraine, and some of them, which are in Ukraine, will also have some troubles going out of Ukraine, especially male artists. But yeah, we will overcome. And of course, we didn't have much choice to choose the subject, because a piece is what we all looking for. And the question of peace is now very up to date, and the peace not only like a condition, but also a definition, because a peace is now really needs to be, the definition of peace really needs to be evaluated, or it should be much more thought given to it, because on the multiple levels, on the political, social, economical, digital, it has to be managed differently. And artists and the culture, they're always on the forefront, on the front line of visions of the future. And that's how we are fighting, and that's our
mission.
Yeah, that's our mission, to spread the word, to speak aloud, and about the values which has to be on the ground of the new definition of peace, or the new communities, and how people have to live and to behave in order to achieve this common peace. And yeah, I think maybe I shall describe the project a little bit, or shall I?
I think it's interesting what you mentioned about the various frontiers on which the peace should be redefined currently. And one of them mentioned by you was the peace in digital space or in cyberspace. And I think that Daniel has a lot to tell us about the project and the mission of his project, the foundation ICT for Peace. I would invite you to tell us more about it.
Thank you so much. I'm really happy to be here and grateful. But I still have to start on a somber note, because the way in Switzerland, how we were coming to this situation was, of course, because of this illegal, unjustified aggression and the continuing atrocities that's going on. And in a way, we are helpless, and everyone tries to do a little bit. So this was for me the starting point. Also, the terrible breach of international law and the UN Charter, and that's something that we cherish dearly, also from ICT for Peace, because the construction of peace originally depends on the international law, the international humanitarian law, and so forth. That's where we come in. And of course, politicians and military people have failed in a way to prevent this war, and I don't see how they can, in the near future, build peace. And that's why I also was very much interested what other members of our society, its particular artists, can contribute, so like ICT for Peace, Art for Peace. And thanks to Olena from the Swiss Embassy and Domino Birki, we met you, and then I was really happy that Charlotte, who is here, I think, from the Zurich Art Weekend, then together with Olena responded so positively to this. And of course, they are brothers or sisters in arms. They do this kind of fairs. And so that's why we are here. Now, maybe a few words about cyber and how cyber and peace changed. Of course, as I started from the sort of traditional modus, the international law, the post-Second World War architecture that we have, we adhere to the UN Charter and so forth. But that was in the physical space and kinetic space, and so we are entering the cyberspace. And what does that mean in the cyberspace? And we as a foundation have spent a lot of time on how to use technology for peace, peace building, peace operations, human rights protection on one hand, but also how to maintain the cyberspace that we cherish, which is so important for us, remains peaceful. At the same time, we have, of course, seen the development of these tools in detrimental ways, not only impacting relations among states and that they attack each other, but how they impact the human, what we call the human security or the human insecurity, and through social media, misinformation, disinformation, hacking, whatever, you name it, it's all on the table now. And there we have a different kind of peace or absence of peace, which we have to think about and worry about and try to solve it. And the measure peace, that's in your title, is of course very complicated in this, in an additional layer of non-peace. But I'm hopeful that with artists and new ideas, we can find new ways, and we have to. And then maybe later I can add some examples of art in the field of peace building, peacekeeping at the later stage. Thank you.
Thank you. That would be very interesting to hear about the examples, and we would come a little bit closer to that part shortly. And meanwhile, I totally agree that art allows another space to raise awareness, to talk about peace, and also it has this potential to evoke empathy on much deeper level, on the level that is beyond language, beyond analytical, as it addresses to human emotions. And emotionally, no matter what part of the world we are all the same, we are human beings, and this is very important. And I really can say that using or choosing performance as a media to raise that awareness is a very good choice, and I would love to hear maybe a little bit more in detail about Performing Kyiv artists and performances that are going to take part.
Well, thank you for pointing out to that. Well, this program, it's not very big, but it's very precise. So we selected the artists who would speak on various levels. Somebody would be more explanatory and talking about political realm. Some of them would be speaking about their personal things like overcoming trauma, surviving, finding new ways, finding new lives. But all of them would be speaking about the same, about the human life and the value of human life and the necessity of human to be together and to build a community, which is based on the very easy principles of pluralism. And when I'm talking about pluralism, not in a sense which would philosophers say that it's a freedom of will, but it's more about the freedom of speech, of the expression. And we probably might address Hannah Arendt, who would once say that humankind barely had any significant amount of time when the peace was there on the earth. And the peace is always the question which is not built by the states, it's built by the communities. And the communities have to be formed not by somebody in a hierarchical way, like somebody would impose peace. Well, like now the politicians who will try to pacify the conflict, saying that we will force the peace. But that's not how it's done. The values produce the peace. And yeah, the artists who are there in our program, they are very precise about their expressions. There is the performance of Leftina Kahidze, which is the one which is very explanatory and very exciting in the way that it's built up like a drama theater with roles and people interacting. It's not like a panel discussion, but it's more like a play in a theater, and it's really a performance in a way that's like performance arts. There is a very interesting project by Roman Mikhailov, who would be I will just tell more. He's going to burn the matches. Well, we have matches, like, safety matches, like normal one to burn the fire. Like typical Ukrainian box of matches, which has a depiction of sort of a cartoonesque folklore Ukrainian soldier, Cossack. And it has the matches inside, which are all, the heads of the matches are covered with the raspberry color. I don't know what's correctly called this stuff which is burning. But this color is a traditional color of Cossacks, of like old, ancient Ukrainian military. And by burning these matches, he is sharing his life with his reflections with the people who are dying in the forefront. Like every other match which is burned, it's like people who are leaving us, who are going away. And it's also very touching on the multiple levels and very descriptive. There is a very interesting project which we don't know yet if we would be able to do it. It's by Danilo Galkin, who is suggesting a very provocative thing with, I don't know, shall I tell this story or...
let's keep it secret. So
okay.
probably that would be a great surprise when it's happening, because actually the surprise component is an important part of it, right?
It has to be there. They're just thinking that when I'm talking, it's difficult actually to talk about the performances, because the basis of performance is when you have to see it first, and then.
Yeah.
Well, when you're describing it, it's already like you're spoiling.
But thank you very much for the sneak peek into the program. I think that's also very important and very interesting to
There would be
talk
one
about.
actually which is going to be very, very nice, but we'll have Maria Kulikovska. She will be having the video here, and we have a wonderful artist, a Swiss artist, but of Ukrainian descent, who will also join our program, and maybe we shall
invite Nika to tell us a little bit more about her practice and her connection.
Sure. I was born in Ukraine and raised in Switzerland, and I think for me it's in my artistic work this question of identity or where I belong is very strong. Also all these languages, because I grew up in Ukraine but in a Bulgarian village, so I had Bulgarian, Russian, Ukrainian, then I moved to Switzerland, so this is something kind of my background. And I work with a lot of media like photography, performance, installation, video, and I usually do costumes or costume props that I then reenact in photography and video. And for me it's always about, most of the time I use the costumes myself, or there is a specific reason why a certain body or bodies are present. And for me it's also the question in an installation or in a video, or if the body is present, if the body is absent, what happens if one time I made I can say like, rethinking the traditional Ukrainian dress, and I remade it in my own way, and then I hang it as an installation without a body. And it was also it was talking about what kind of body do people imagine being there if there is no body. So, and for the project in Zurich, I'm also going to do a performance that involve costume pieces, but also will have some references to historical images, because I researched also a lot of historical narratives and images in Swiss archives, and how Ukraine during the Russian Empire was portrayed there, not as a own country, but also just only as a suburb of the Russian Empire. This is kind of a citation from one of the sources. And very often in my performances I kind of reenact those pictures of this fake identity or staged identity. And for me it's always about to reenact images and to give like a new image and produce a new image, what can be a future image, and how kind of an open, how kind of an open and peaceful country can look like, and also how can a kind of a, how this Ukrainian identity is not always like this kind of caricaturesque, but it's really like a very open. We see it with the war. There's like Ukrainian artists, Ukrainian people came here, but there are also a lot of people in Europe, over the globe, like me, with a Ukrainian background, with roots. And I think it's also one of the big advantages and a beautiful thing of the project, that we see that Kyiv is not like only in Ukraine. It's not a geographical location. It's really like it's all over. And yeah, for this, I just come back for the performance I'm gonna do there. What I usually do, performance is for me very important, because it's also about the body and what happens to me if I reenact stories, pictures that are very close to me. And I can also involve different narratives, like talks with my grandma that is living in Ukraine under occupation. And as you said before, it's about not losing the connection and try to find communication, and also in the digital sphere. And for me, at the moment, it's very difficult because she is under Russian occupation. We can communicate, but not openly, because she's very fearful, as I would also be, that the Russian people, the Russian government listens what she says. So we communicate usually in images. So I always ask her, hey, how is the situation? She's like, you know, there were like ears falling from the sky, and there are a lot of them. So we always communicate in very visual images how the situation progresses, and I'm gonna also incorporate some of these images within the performance, but also stories of neighbors, of people, because also two of my sister's friends who went to school, to the same school as I did in Ukraine, they also fled, and they're in Switzerland, so we also have a lot of conversation because we come from the same background, and they're now here for the first time. So I'm going to also incorporate stories in my performance of people who are from Ukraine and left Ukraine. And for me, it's also important that I give kind of my body during the performance as kind of a vessel for all the stories, histories, narratives. But I also try to give kind of also my personal view and to talk from my personal perspective, because I did not flew Ukraine. I live here since a long time, and my perspective might be very different than from Ukrainian artists living in Ukraine and coming for the project. And I think it's also very important to also differentiate that perspectives are very different, but there are a lot of common topics or concerns, like the war, peace, vulnerability of bodies. What I think this war is just affecting all of us on many levels, bodily, mentally. Yeah,
that's true. And you know, I really like the phrase that you used, that it becomes a vessel for stories, and in a way, Performing Kyiv project itself becomes a vessel for human stories, for personal stories that at the same time end up in this commonly shared safe space to process the trauma that we all somehow go through on different levels. And thank you for mentioning that. And I know that Daniel also has something to say regarding the, the artistic...
Yeah. No, I cannot add this so beautifully expressed and relevant, and the example of your grandmother, which really, you know, I mean, it's horrible. No, I had some experiences or some examples where, you know, peace-building, peacekeeping operations, like by the UN and the international community, is using art as a tool, also. And I mean, I have some examples, but I can also refer to a very nice article by a colleague, by Celia Shambalam. I'm not a specialist in this, but she also recognizes, you know, the defying all linguistic borders, the role of the art, connecting people, and in a universal language. And for them, for many, can be a resource in the process of preventing war, reconciliation, for instance, or negotiations, mediations. Also bring people together, or try to eliminate misunderstandings among people. And after maybe the peace has been concluded, there's a lot of work to be done on healing, reconciliation, and their art can play an important role by the victims and maybe even perpetrators, like we have seen in South Africa. So there are a lot of examples being used, but one has to also be careful, because some have used art also for stifling hate and division in societies, and also one lesson is it should be bottom up. It should be it shouldn't be coming from some international organization with a lot of money and impose on. It has to be grassroots based. Otherwise, and then it touches the people, and then their heart starts moving, when they see each other in art. So I would not say much more, but I think there are people who think very seriously about this in actual peacekeeping, peace building. And one day in Ukraine, we will have peace, obviously, and then these things will play an important role too, but maybe now already.
That is true. And it's very important to give the platform to those voices. And I really love what you said, that it has to be bottom up. And when you have a great idea and you unite people around you, around this idea, and then more and more supporting organizations join it, I really love this process. And just on that note, to say thank you to Daniel for introducing Evgen to us. And I'm very happy to be a part of the process, as Zurich Art Weekend is actively supporting the project, and I'm very proud to be a part of it right now. And yes, I think it's we all share this important mission to create a platform for the voices that are muted and to pursue peace. And on this note, I think it would be very important, talking about the platform and voices, to play the video of Ukrainian artist Maria Kulikovska, who was unfortunately forced to leave her homeland not once but twice during the course of the history of Russian aggression against Ukraine, and she will share her story with us now.
Hi everyone, I'm Maria Kulikovska, an artist, actionist, performer and architect. I am double displaced person. I don't like a term refugee in my case. I'm 2 times in my life experienced what it is life in exile. First time when the war for me started in February 2014, when Russia annexed illegally Crimean Peninsula, my homeland. And since that time, I'm degenerative artist and forbidden artist in Russia and the occupied territory, which is my home. And since that time, I am living and lived in exile around Europe, in many different towns, countries, but never built a base until 2020, where I finally, when I finally started to build my home, new home in Kyiv, in Ukraine, in capital of Ukraine, together with my partner and my co-author, Oleg Vinichenko. We started to build our studio here and our life. And then I got pregnant, and I struggled during the pregnancy quite a lot. And then finally, five months before full invasion, I gave a birth through the heavy operation, and we got a beautiful daughter, Yeva. And finally, I felt myself very happy happiest person ever in the whole universe. I finally built a beautiful house. I started to build our own art space, independent art space and studio. I kept working as an artist, and then happened full invasion. 1 month after that, I was forced to flee from Ukraine again to EU, and since that time, the last year, I was living in exile around Europe again. Right now, I'm making this video from Kyiv because I felt that I really need to return to my home to feel it and feel myself. But I'm okay. Why? Because art. I strongly believe that through art we can make a lot of things and as well fix a lot of conflicts. When happened the annexation of Crimea, when I end up in a dark depression, in a low bottom of my life, when I was homeless, especially that time, art helped me and art survived me. I survived through art, not only mentally but physically. People united. It's a space of freedom. You can be completely free and independent. You can spread the truth and tell the truth through your heart and your soul, through the skin. Art can be like pure art, can be as a pure soul, a place for healing and talking about our traumas and discuss and share about what is really bother you and what is your fears. And it's the first step to heal. That's why I know how to survive. And when happened full invasion last February, I was not depressed. I was not disappointed. I just knew that I need to keep working. I need to spread my voice to be able to be alive, to feel myself, and to give this platform to others to feel themselves and to be alive. So I really believe that through art we can change the world. Slava Ukraini!
I think with such a powerful and touching message, it is important to say that art truly has this huge potential and power to change things. And as we have a little bit more time, I would like to address, in few words, to address the subtitle of the project, which is called How to Measure Peace. How to measure peace? Can we measure it through the general situation, or can we measure it through personal stories? What is your connection to peace? And talking about the future, how do you see the role of art in the future, in the pursuit of peace? This is the question to Nika.
I think it's very interesting, as you say, like measure and peace, and it's something it's nearly contradictory. And I maybe just gonna answer you through a story that I was one time talking with some of my Swiss friends, and they said, like, peace will come, just give those lands away. And then I said, like, no, this cannot happen, we cannot just like always give things away. And this is also sometimes the price is very high of peace, and you don't want peace under for bad conditions. We need to have our land back. And how I say, the value and the measure will be the lives of the people who fought there and are still fighting.
Exactly. Maybe the stories of people let us understand it better rather than numbers and statistics and the articles. What do you think, Evgen?
Yeah, that's again a question. I was through all this time. I was giving a lot of thinking of this interesting aspect that there is a balance between good and evil, and it's vastly considered that the good has to be defenseless. To which I disagree, because defending your values, it's also part of being good. You are consistently good. You have an idea, and if this idea is based on universal values, you have to defend it. And it's not that somebody said to us that this is good and you have to fight for it. We feel it, and that's how it's built on. That's why good has to fight evil. And I just remembered one little story. When it all just started in March, I was in Lviv, and I was volunteering. I just met guys from Spanish newspaper El País, and I just helped them to translate and to get around. Later, I've been told that this profession is called fixer. So I've been fixer over wartime. And the guys the journalists were doing very good materials, the articles for El País, and it was not reportages, it's more like essays and more opinions. And I remember we once went to the railway station where there were an awful, terrible lot of refugees, because Lviv is one of the cities on the west of Ukraine where it was a kind of a hub of, where people would be going by railway and then would be making their way towards Europe. And it was a terrible mess. And they wanted to write an article about the children in war. And it was one of the most complicated, the difficult impression for me, because you're talking to children, and children, they don't have the bias. They just feel, they're just natural. And we had a lot of very unpleasant interviews. It was also very difficult to speak to children because the parents would refuse to give this opportunity because they didn't want to torture the children to be tortured even more. But those who allowed, there was plenty of unpleasant stories. But one I remember, it was very simple, but so descriptive. And the little guy was asked, what does he want? Well, because there were a few questions related to how did he end up here and something. But in the end, the journalist would ask, what do you want? And he said, I want home. I want to go home. That's where I was completely crushed. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
all this stuff. Yeah.
That's a very powerful message. And then another question, what is home for many people? And yeah, when we talk about land is home for so many people, for so many personal stories. And I think it's a very great mission that we have with the Performing Kyiv project to give voice to those people, to hear them, to let them tell their story, to let them describe what home is for them. And on that note, I would just want to say, first of all, that we are cordially inviting you with a big pride to join and attend Performing Kyiv performance series during Zurich Art Weekend that will take place from 9th to 11th of June in various locations, and we will announce these locations shortly. And if you have any questions to our panelists, we still have 5 minutes. Please feel free to ask. Yeah. I'm thinking about that. Thank you, Nika.
Thank you for Thank you for this event and for the discussion. I totally agree with a lot of theses that I heard today. For me personally, I'm a refugee here, and I'm also feel that this war is also not only military, and there is a lot of frontiers, and the cultural frontier is one of them. So as it was discussed today, art is really kind of a tool how we can fight this war. And can we say as a conclusion that art is political? And what do you think, if art is political, how we can use this aspect of art to fight with the aggression, with political aggression? Thanks.
I think maybe, yeah.
Yeah, well, I'll take this, this question. Art, it's part of culture. Culture is everything is culture. Even if you drink beer, it's also culture. We just have to be very cautious how do you use it, because I once said that art is a very precious asset, but also art is a very dangerous weapon. So you have to be very careful how you use art, and it's very easy to fall into the side of evil and to use it like propaganda and the fake news and conveying the evil messages. Because art and culture is a very efficient way to reach the minds. So it's your responsibility which side you take.
Thank you, Evgen.
Maybe just for some people, sometimes you are an activist, sometimes some artists are not activists, but the symbolic part of art is very strong, because symbols can really have a great and big impact. And I also think that art, sometimes without words, it can really go under your skin, and it really has another impact than only watching the news and the media. It's really just really sometimes can transmit feelings better.
Thank you very much. And I guess we have time maybe for one more question. If someone else has the question, please let us know.
So I had a question actually for Daniel, because before you asked a question about how to measure peace, and actually maybe in the digital realm, for me even it's not very clear, so how would you being an expert in peace building, how do you measure peace, and what's your experience, and I've taught you.
Yeah, right. I tried to say it a little bit, but I think in a kinetic war, it is a clear cut. You have war and it stops, and then you have peace. But in the cyberspace, this is not the case, because we have so many layers where social media and so forth are impacting the individual, and that's what we call the security, the personal security, the human security, which was not so much in the minds of people before. We were thinking of kinetic wars, and then it stops. But this is now completely changed the definition of war and peace, and makes it much more complicated. You could have wars simmering under the threshold of war, physical war. And that's what's happening today between the major powers. Just not enough so that you wouldn't retaliate kinetically. This is, for instance, the attacks on critical infrastructure, hospitals, financial systems, and so forth. But then even worse is hate speech, misinformation, disinformation, hate speech. We have examples in Burma, where people were mobilized against a whole group of people through social media, through Facebook, for instance, and no control. So, and so forth. So we don't have the solution. And so the measurement is even more complex than the definite war and peace situation. Also, I think for peace, for you, Ukrainians, the peace and the measuring peace is a totally different one than we have from the outside, and I think we have to be humble and as you mentioned, so just give away a little piece of land and then we have peace. And of course we don't have peace. We will not have peace. So I would also maybe, differentiate also in that sense. For me personally is really also the breach of international law and sort of the post-Second World War constructions where all major powers, including the aggressor, was part of a system. And he has abandoned the system. And it's very tragic. And so for me, for instance, peace, when we again have a system where people or states adhere to the rules, the law, that for me would also be a criterion for peace.
Thank you, Daniel. And to conclude, I would like to come back to the phrase that Yevgen said in the beginning, introducing the project, that the peace has to be redefined currently on multiple frontiers, as well as the cyberspace and the cultural frontier. And we are very glad to invite you to join, to witness and to be a part of that redefinition of peace on the cultural frontier with Performing Kyiv project. Thank you very much for joining us today.